Astrophysicist Bernard Haisch and his wife Marsha Sims have written a new book. It's called The Miracle of Our Universe, a new view of consciousness, God, science, and reality. In the week that I spoke to Marsha, which was mid-September 2024, that book was #1 on Amazon in 3 categories. Sadly, Bernard has quite severe Parkinson's and has some very bad days, and unfortunately, when we were scheduled to talk, the three of us, Bernard couldn't make it. So I had a conversation with Marsha. She co-authored this book. What you'll see is that in order to remain faithful to his thinking, she does refer to some notes that she made and some extracts from the book itself. Here then is Marsha Sims suggesting that consciousness is causal and fundamental.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marsha Sims. I'm co-author on The Miracle of Our Universe, a new view of consciousness, God, science, and reality. I'm co-author and I'm wife of Bernard Haisch, the astrophysicist. We met at Lockheed Palo Alto Research Laboratories. I was a support person for the scientist, administrator, technical typist, I kept all the scientists organized, and believe me, they really need it because they've got their head in an analytical mode that's very creative, but then practicality is something different. I mean, I supported like 80 different people, scientists. I helped Bernard, I helped him prepare papers and get ready for conferences and with travel. We started the Journal of Scientific Exploration. So I was the executive editor and he was the editor-in-chief. And that journal is still going strong. And I did that project for 10 years. So that project is more relevant to the topics that we discuss in our book, because in the Society for Scientific Exploration, all sorts of topics that are outside of the mainstream box are discussed in a scholarly scientific fashion. Bernie got Parkinson's. He was diagnosed in 2010, and it's been a slow digression. And he wrote 3 other books, and then he had this 4th book that he was working on. And he had all sorts of computer notes and all sorts of really wonderful ideas. And he asked me, and I'm honored, he asked me if I would help him put it together. And with my extensive editorial background, took us, I don't know, around 6 months. He interfaced with me. It was very technical at first. And so I
Right.
made it so it's more understandable to the layman. And I
Yeah.
hope you're understanding it okay. Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you because that is actually one of the points that I wanted to raise, is that it is very, very readable. It's really simple as an underestimation. It doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
But what you do is you do take the reader through in a really lovely, logical fashion, and build to what you're talking, the essence of the book. And also, I must say, Marsha, that I have never read an easier to understand explanation of the double slit experiment than is in your book. This is a little bit unfair because actually I read that Bernie actually started out, before he was a scientist, he started out studying in the church. Is that an area that you have any knowledge of?
Okay, well, Bernie is a German immigrant. He came to the United States when he was 3 years old. And so his parents left Germany after World War II because it was really devastated. And his mom was a very devout Catholic, very devout. So Bernie was raised in this kind of environment in his household. They immigrated to Indianapolis, and that's where Bernie was raised, in Indianapolis. And he was raised in the Catholic Church there. And his mom got him involved in all the church activities. He was an altar boy, and he got into all of the wonderful amenities of the Catholic Church in the service. He loved you know, how the decorative, festive nature of the service. So he'd go home after church and he'd light all his stuffed animals up on his bed in his bedroom. This is when he was a little boy, and he'd feed them communion. Other little boys are playing with Legos or out playing baseball, but he was feeding his stuffed animals communion. So he really got into the spiritual nature of the faith. And so that's how he got into it. And his mom, you know, who's so devout, she convinced him that he should go into the Catholic priesthood because, you know, what greater honor is it for a Catholic woman to have her son become a priest? So he tried it out for a year, and it just after a year he decided it wasn't for him because it was too lonely, and he got interested in girls, and so he wanted to date. And actually, I think his greater love was always astrophysics. His mom had him convinced that being a priest was the best thing. So he decided that he would go to Indiana University in Bloomington and start studying to become an astrophysicist, sorry.
Mm.
And he's always really brilliant. He was valedictorian of his class. He went to a special Latin school in Indianapolis, so he had really good quality education. And then he got his undergrad in astrophysics, and then he went to the University of Wisconsin, and that's where he got his PhD.
And you were saying earlier on, you know, that you were sort of jointly editing the Society magazine, the Society
Journal, as a journal.
the journal. Sorry, yeah, there you go.
Articles. That's okay. Yeah.
Which was which was including aspects of science that was outside of the mainstream concept. And I have to say, basically, the book, which again, as you titled earlier on, "The Miracle of the Universe: A New View of Consciousness, God, Science, and Reality," the two of you are putting forward the God model. And if there's anything that's outside of mainstream science, surely it's putting God right smack bang center into all of it, isn't it? I mean, was it difficult for you and Bernie to actually put this idea forward?
Well, Bernie wanted to be sure that he called it the God model because that is a scientific terminology. You put out your theories, your ideas, and then people can study them, and then they decide whether they want to go along with the ideas, to believe it or reject it. So what it is, I mean, this is really important to him. He emphasized this to me the other day, that to have a self-consistent model of reality to explain life and its purpose and what it might be like in the afterlife. So the book uses a simulation with models of how God and science can coexist. So he doesn't say, I have all the answers. Here's a model that you can look at and you can research. So it's a really nice way to look at spirituality, because a lot of people just say, oh, this is how it is. No, Bernie postulates. No.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier on, you do so in a very structured way, which takes you gently as a reader through the thinking. It's always done with science right up there as the obvious vehicle for it, but the innate feeling of the belief, the faith, is actually inherent in it as well. Now,
can I just add one thing? So Bernie has a really, hold on, the phone's ringing. Got it.
okay.
Bernie has a quote that's been it's been propagated through the internet, and it's a really important one. And this is sort of like the basis of what he believes when he wrote the book. His quote is, "Advances are made by answering questions. Discoveries are made by questioning answers." So
Right.
that's what Bernie did in this book, and I helped him do it, is to question the answers. because
Yeah.
people get locked into the answers and they think that's how it is. There are a lot of mainstream scientists that won't look beyond the answers that are currently in fashion. But you've got to question those answers if you really want to make progress.
Yeah. And I guess there are all sorts of reasons why so many people get stuck in those, in the accepted answers. I mean, I suppose the classic example of that is the idea of the Big Bang, which, as you point out in the book, was never really right from the start as an expression, expected to be held up as the way it is, but has been rather adopted as that ever since.
Bernie, I have some notes. I'm just looking what he said. Oh yeah, what is the Big Bang? So this is our answer to the Big Bang. The Big Bang is how astronomers explain the way the universe began. It is the idea that the universe began as a single point, and then it exploded, expanded, and stretched to grow as large as it is right now, and it is still stretching, sometimes unevenly. No one knows why it stretches unevenly.
Once the book starts to get into some of the atomic structure of reality, there's an example that you Bernie and you use about the way that photons are reflected off glass. The point of that specific little piece in the book is really to be asking the question, how do 4% of photons, when they hit glass, know that they should be reflecting light back?
And it's into the mathematical construct of the universe.
It has to be an outside consciousness affecting the photons. That's really what Bernie was raising at that point.
I have to just say, this is one of the parts out of the book that's really important, is one of the mysteries of our world is how every photon of light, every electron and quark, and indeed every point of space itself seems to just know what to do at each moment. The mystery is that the tiniest parts of the universe have no mechanisms or structures by which to make such decisions. Only God could make those decisions. So there's a consciousness interfacing with those photons, telling them what to do.
Bernie's sort of making the point that it's more about an intelligent aspect of consciousness, accepting that consciousness is everything, but not that it can't be explained by statistical analysis alone, can it? That's the point of that example.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've got 100 photons hitting this pane of glass, how do only 4 of them know or actually go through the act of bouncing back so that the mini conscious observer, the human being, sees that reflection rather than a mathematical process or a mathematical origin?
Yeah, it is mathematical. So God imagines all of this by organizing his thoughts into computer-like algorithms which run in his mind. And by the way, when I say he, we do not view God as being a he, a she, or an it, because God is more than that. It's not a sex. God is a consciousness. It doesn't have a human form. So there's no anthropomorphism. I can't say that word. Anthropomorphism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So God is a mathematician. There have been books written about that. I think Marco Livio has a book called that, Is God a Mathematician? And by the way, I'm a music teacher and an opera singer, and music is completely based on math. Bernie and I believe God is a mathematician. All these algorithms are already run into a virtual simulation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, completely.
Like the Matrix, more advanced than that.
Yeah. I think the Matrix analogy, the movie, the Matrix analogy gets a little bit worn, doesn't it?
It's more than that. God did create everything by mathematics. Everything, I mean, all of the theories and the formulas for how the universe works. I mean, it's very precise.
Right.
It didn't just happen by accident. They couldn't. I mean, just the existence of life as it is. I mean, you know that there's a purpose behind it and there's a consciousness behind it. It's just too perfect to be accident. I mean, in Bernie's book, The God Theory, he gave 10 basic reasons for why there has to be a God because of the physical things that needed to be present for the universe
Right.
and Earth and for us to happen.
Right.
Okay.
And this is one of the points that you make in this book, which is that so many scientists and other authors have raised the point that statistically the maths just they just fit together to actually be conducive to creating life, don't they? The whole force of the universe is for creation.
Right. And he uses the example of water, about all the ways that water can be. Water can be a liquid, it can be frozen, it could be a gas, and it's just the way that the property of water can float like ice cubes floating in a glass. Has to be the molecular structure has to be just so for the oceans around the earth to interface with the land.
Right, right.
I mentioned Mario Livio. The universe appears to have been designed by a pure mathematician. And Einstein also wondered, how is it possible that mathematics fits so excellently with the objects of physical reality? So this idea goes back to Plato and Pythagoras, who believed that in addition to the physical world we perceive, there is also a real world of mathematical forms. So an example would be like the mathematical concepts of pi, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter, or the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Other examples are Newton's laws of motion and Einstein's theory of relativity, special relativity, and general relativity. And music, as I mentioned before, is tied to mathematics through harmonics. Johann Sebastian Bach, the father of modern music, devised a system of tuning that is based on mathematics. In this system, the 12 notes of the octave of the standard keyboard are tuned in such a way that it is possible to play music in all major and minor keys without sounding perceptibly out of tune. Each step is tuned to the 12th root of 2. Other aspects of music, such as rhythm, time signature, and other notations, are also mathematical. So this mathematical nature of music makes me wonder whether God uses music as a mathematical expression through sound, or is it possible that music is mathematical because the universe was designed by a pure mathematician? So I like to think of music as being the voice of God, really. And music has the greatest influence on us of anything abstract in the world. It really undergirds all of society. It's impossible to get away from it because it's pervasive around the planet, even though the forms it takes vary tremendously. From Muslim calls to prayer, to classical symphonies, to operas and masses, to rock and pop and rap. And there's a famous hymn that claims, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. So again, I say perhaps music by its mathematical nature is a universal expression for civilization and for God. So I'm pretty passionate about music.
quite right too, because I mean, first words of the Bible are in the beginning was the Word, and that's basically talking about sound emanating across the nothingness, the void, and God in the context of consciousness is absolutely universal. Is there anything around that that you would like to highlight?
The main part, most important part to acknowledge is that we're all spiritual beings, and each of us has a spark of God within us. And it's important to acknowledge that in every person that we come in contact with. So, yeah, we speak about that at the very beginning of the book, when we were talking about the logos. You mentioned the logos. So, and the universe coming out of nothingness, we call that the Ein Sof, which is the Kabbalah term, and that the word of God was actually it's a Greek word, and it means expression of thought. So it's more than sound; it's also an expression of thought. So in the beginning was the Logos. We read in John 1:1, and the Logos was with God, and Logos was God. And God created the universe with the energy of love, which is not just a warm, fuzzy feeling, but actually a powerful force. Love enhances consciousness in a strong emotional expression, creating inspiration and an attraction that is binding. So, another important aspect of this is that we have free will. So we have free will to use our spark of God, which we're part of God because we came from God, or, we can do good or evil, and everything reflects back to us what we put out. So it's best to put out love for sure. And so let me get back to the logos. So God existed. He came out of the Ein Sof, and God got lonely. So he decided he wanted to use his consciousness to create experiences for himself. So he created, we believe, the 0-point energy. He used the 0-point energy to make everything else come about. So the 0-point energy is this vast sea of energy that underlies all of matter. And this was used to create the Big Bang. And I already explained what the Big Bang was. And then the Big Bang happened, and then all the galaxies and the universe, the planets, and all the beings on Earth came about as a result of that. But I actually forgot what your question was. I went on to the creation.
No, that's fine. I kind of was leading you to talk a little bit about that, and that's fine because the 0-point field. I mean, some of my subscribers are, will completely understand what the 0-point field is. Others, well, if they've stuck with us this long in the conversation, they may just be hanging on in there because they won't be science orientated. But as you say, the 0-point field is the underlying quantum foam that really all matter emanates from, isn't it? And this is one of the important things about the book, is that within science there is this huge divide between materialists and non-materialists, and clearly the God model is coming firmly from the non-materialist aspect. Just tell us a little bit about what that, in simple terms, means for as a perspective on everything.
Well, I would like to, since I started talking about the 0-point field, could I tell you a little bit more about that and then get to the idea of the scientific perspective? Okay, so the 0-point field, we have a couple chapters in the book based on that. Bernie has a scientific invention idea patent on how to possibly tap the 0-point energy. So it's pretty important. And if anyone's interested, you could go to our website for our company. It's www.jovion.com. And we present the experiment. And we have an idea to create a Casimir generator, which could generate energy. So anyway, the 0-point field, the ZPF, and its attendant 0-point energy ZPE is broadly recognized is a vast field of electromagnetic energy. It's also known as the quantum vacuum field, or the QVF. This field represents the underlying energy that is everywhere in the universe, even when there is nothing but vacuum. It's composed of a combination of every frequency or wavelength. Some are short and some are long, and it's perfectly random. The ZPF is an infinite source of energy. It was already known to Einstein and Max Planck, and we believe that the ZPF can be tapped in a way that would provide humanity with an endless total clean energy supply without violating the second law of thermodynamics. This is the big criticism that we receive. Okay, our process has nothing to do with heat. It is electromagnetic. So it can't violate the second law of thermodynamics. There's no heat involved. There's the Casimir force that happens when two parallel metal plates are pushed together by an overpressure of the ZPE from the outside of the plates. A Casimir cavity can be created that takes advantage of this force. So the reason why there's this pressure with the plates coming together is the longer waves of the ZPE can't get inside because they're too long. They can't get inside, and so it starts causing this this vacuum. It actually makes the space between the Casimir plates lower than zero.
Crazy.
I know. So the ZPF can be manipulated through the use of nano-sized Casimir cavities by squeezing out photon energy. Electron orbitals of an atom spiral down inside the cavity and photons are emitted. So our process then sends the photons through a photovoltaic cell and electricity will be generated. The ZPF acts as a kind of catalyst, and so this could be done with the Casimir generator. This process requires no fossil or nuclear fuel and emits no waste, carbon, or harmful byproducts. And in this, Bernie also wants to add that the ZPE may be an expression or thought of God, which is important to tie it into the book. New Age beliefs sometimes misinterpret the ZPE as being God. No, Bernie believes it's an expression of God.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the book you talk repeatedly about the hardware and the software, although everything is of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was kind of losing myself a little bit in it.
Well, I guess the software is God, right? The mathematical part.
And the hardware is the material world?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, I think.
Yeah, actually just opened my eyes to a new way of looking at it. Yeah, the hardware is the material world. The software is what makes it happen. It's the computations, the algorithms, yeah.
Yeah, because he talks about the thoughts of God, the way that the thoughts of God are those laws, the laws of physics that make things work. We talked about earlier on about the maths of things.
Yeah.
So the 0-point field, can I just share something with you? I just want to share a screen a second. So so do you recognize some of this? This is the quantum field, the electron cloud around a hydrogen nucleus, okay? So this is showing it at different energy levels. I just wanted to share this out of interest because this shape here, just for the viewers watching this, I'll try and make some sense of this. The nucleus of the hydrogen atom is in the center here, and the lighter colors are indicating where the electron or electrons, I can't remember how many there are in a hydrogen atom, are most likely to be found. So it's a probability map in a way, right? And it's the orbital of the hydrogen atom. But this shape, which is like two opposing, Leibniz skates of Bernoulli, infinity signs, is also an incredibly sacred symbol. So in spirituality, that's an incredibly sacred symbol. Now, the other thing is that this actual shape Now I'm going a little bit esoteric here, and you can tell me to just move on. But that actual shape, where we've got two infinity symbols, effectively, is a shape that can be found in the non-physical space by using intuitive connection. It's not scientific, it's an intuitive connection through dowsing, right? So now you might say, well, dowsing, don't go there. But there are...
I'm a dowser.
Right. Okay. So the two interlocking aspects, that they can be found by dowsing, and you can trace it in a power center, what we dowsers call earth energy. So in the earth energy power center, the vortex, the main positive vortex in a space, you can find these shapes, right? And what happens is that one side pulses like this, and then the other one does this, and there's a harmony that forms. And again, from a musician's point of view, it's an amazing experience, because you can feel this pulsing of, and I have to use the word energy, at these points. The thing is that in my dowsing experience of some decades, to me, earth energy is actually the 0 point field. As a dowser, have you ever had any experience or ever heard of earth energy? I'm just interested, seeing as you have been and are a dowser.
Yeah, so my dowsing experience is rather limited, but I'm not as experienced in the dowsing as you are.
Okay.
I do know that when I use the pendulum, I know it's not me moving it. I believe it's my subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a Huna student, and one of the things, I don't know if you know about the Hawaiian philosophy of Huna.
Very, very vaguely.
Oh, it works with 3 levels of consciousness. So there's the conscious self, the uhani. There's the low self, subconscious, or the unahipuli. And then there's the aumakua, the high self. So what I believe is, when you're dowsing, you're speaking to your subconscious, your unahipuli. And it's the psychic self that can connect with what's going on, energetically, and it's a different kind of energy than what a scientist would call energy. So we have to be careful. I know that when you're a dowser, you do feel a force, but it's not like energy that you would create in a test tube, or you would burn up in your automobile to drive. It's a different kind of energy. It's a subtle energy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is 100%. Yeah, yeah, and it is difficult, I think, and I think this is what, again, coming back to your book, because I don't want to stray too far off the science and the subject. I think that this is one of the things that is that mysticism and science, I mean spirituality and science, or whatever you want to call it, is they can either be completely at loggerheads, or they can actually sit very nicely together as potential partners of thought.
Yeah, so the National Academy of Science has a specific way of defining science. Religions and science answer different questions about the world. Whether there is a purpose to the universe or a purpose for human existence are not questions for science. Science is a way of knowing about the natural world. It is limited to explaining the natural world through natural causes. Science can say nothing about the supernatural. So whether God exists or not is a question about which science must be neutral. Because you can't prove the existence of God in a test tube, really.
Is there some place that God could have come from?
Well, we say God came from the Ein Sof.
Of course.
Yeah. The vast field of nothingness. And I don't think we can know any more than that, really, because we're just mere mortals. It's something that's beyond what we're able to analyze or actually even comprehend. Just
Well,
we acknowledge the vast consciousness of God because we see God at work in our lives and in the world around us.
and putting God so firmly square and front center, that inevitably brings up the idea of heaven, which inevitably says hell, heaven and hell. Why is it that Bernie and you think that hell is actually an impossibility? And it's very good to hear that, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, so the reason we think hell is impossible because it's claimed to be an everlasting realm of torment reserved for humans who committed grievous offenses against God, often referred to as mortal sins, mainly by Catholics, is what Bernie was brought up to believe. But there's an open and shut case argument against the existence of hell. Even the most evil person can only commit a finite number of sins in one mortal lifetime. But to condemn such a human to everlasting torment for a finite number of transgressions is not only unjust, it's infinitely unjust. Yet God is claimed to be infinitely just. Also, since we are sparks of God because we spun off of his consciousness, why would God want to punish himself? That is completely illogical because we're part of him.
Yeah, there's some lovely logical discussions and propositions in the book. The last question, just see how you feel about this one. Why choose the preferred term of virtual reality rather than simulation?
I actually don't see a difference between virtual reality and simulation.
I firmly do believe that God is in everything and is that universal consciousness, active player in our being. I don't mind whether this is a simulation of virtual reality or is any other kind of reality.
I found a sentence. We use both terms in the same sentence, so they're interchangeable, at least to my way of thinking, they are. So we live in a virtual reality, a cosmic simulation that was created by a vast cosmic consciousness known as God, Creator, or the Source. We are sparks of God and we co-create reality with him, her, it, the consciousness. And then we've devised a self-consistent model of reality to explain life and its purpose and what it might be like in the afterlife. It's a simulation with models of how God and science can coexist. That's actually sort of the nutshell of everything that's in the book.
Exactly. That's lovely. So thank you very, very much, Marsha. Thank you for spending time with me.